The provincial coordinator spoke earlier to say that this event here in the Eastern Cape is the first of its kind of Umkhonto weSizwe. We want to congratulate the deployees of the National High Command for putting this together. I think we must give them a round of applause. Do you know, on many occasions, whenever we have interactions with President Zuma, he always reflects very deeply about the province of the Eastern Cape. And he says that the manner in which we should organize ourselves in the Eastern Cape must be thorough, must be in a way that should inspire confidence. We must not rush things in the manner that it is. That is why, despite the fact that we have appointed provincial detachments in all other provinces, we had not yet appointed the leadership structure here in the province of the Eastern Cape, because the president said that let us take our time and identify the leadership structures. Let's take into consideration, it's not a secret, the fact that part of the areas where our strategic allies is very strong at is here in the Eastern Cape. So in constituting the leadership of the Eastern Cape, we're going to take that dynamic into consideration, so that we plan properly for 2026 and plan for elections, not just to be opposition party, but to be government in all the 33 municipalities of the Eastern Cape province. President Zuma loves the province of the Eastern Cape. You must go and listen, even the current premier of the Eastern Cape province said it that of all the presidents that have ever happened in South Africa, President Zuma is #1 in terms of delivery of infrastructure and social services to the province of the Eastern Cape. The highest number of schools were built here in the Eastern Cape under President Zuma. The highest number of roads were built here in the Eastern Cape because of President Zuma. This mega project, which is happening of a huge highway built by Sanral, which is going to make transportation easier, is conceptualized under President Zuma. And because he has always held this province very dear to his heart. Now, comrades, I think all of us are aligned to the fact that we have to build a very strong and solid Umkhonto weSizwe here in the province. We're going to talk in detail today about the 31st anniversary of the first inclusive elections in South Africa. The convener of deployees is correct that we cannot boldly and correctly say that today is Freedom Day. We can't even say it is Independence Day, because as things stand, we do not enjoy the freedom that was fought for many years, for many centuries by our forefathers. We do not have the independence which was fought for many years. So today we are just taking a pause to mark the 31st anniversary of the first all-inclusive elections in South Africa. Because the freedom that we are supposed to be celebrating should be celebration of a freedom that has got guaranteed water for all the people. But we know as a matter of fact that majority of our people do not still have access to basic water. So what is this freedom without water? What is this freedom without basic houses and basic sanitation? The people of the Eastern Cape still enjoy the most devastating levels of poverty in all the areas of the Eastern Cape. Healthcare facilities are not in good conditions everywhere. Majority of our people do not have access to proper health care here in the Eastern Cape province. That is why we cannot say that we are celebrating Freedom Day, because we do not have freedom in South Africa. Comrades, it is however important to highlight how 27 April 1994 came about. You know, from 1652, South Africa was invaded by white colonial settlers who took over our land and over the years took over everything else that defined us as the indigenous people of this country is called South Africa today. And since they arrived to take over our land, they took everything else that is us. They took our cultures, they eroded our cultures, they eroded our languages, they eroded our identity, they took our land, they took our mineral resources, they took our knowledge systems as well. So what we used to know before they arrived, they said everything else that we knew is irrelevant, including our knowledge on how we take care of our health and how we attend to certain diseases. They said all of that is irrelevant. We're going to teach you the way of life. What that means is that from 1652 this way, there's been a systematic and systemic conquest of the black majority and Africans in particular. Whatever we can say, however strong and motivated we can feel sometimes, the reality still remains that we are still a conquered people by the white colonial settlers. There were so many battles of resistance fought in different periods in history, fought by different clans, by courageous traditional leaders and clans and warriors who resisted colonialism and conquest of our people. We won some of the battles there and there, but we have not yet won the war. There's so many wars of resistance that were fought in the Cape, in the Eastern Cape by our forefathers everywhere. Ultimately resulted in the consolidation of the colonial settlers institutionalizing the conquest into Union of South Africa in the 1910. The Union of South Africa was to say that it's a white-only government whose primary foundation was the oppression and exploitation of black people. Political parties were formed to resist that Union of South Africa. So in 1910, after the colonial invasion that began in 1652, they took everything. They killed our people. They took our animals. They took our identity, they subjected us to nothingness. They forced us into waged labor. When they discovered the mineral resources, in the beginning, black people were allowed to be involved in mining. They passed the laws to say, if you are black, you can't be involved in mining of diamonds, of gold, of anything. And when our people said that we do not want to work for these settlers in exchange of a wage, they introduced taxes to say that each and every person must pay a tax for staying in their own community, for just being human beings. They even introduce taxes for randavels, for huts. They introduce taxes for animals. For even domestic animals, they say that each and every person that they've conquered must pay something. And why did they do that? It's because they wanted to force our people into waged labor, so that all of us are forced into working for a wage. So the systematic and systemic conquest included the fact that our people were forced into working. They introduced something called the Glen Grey Act as well, to say that you are bound to work in the mines, to work for the white settlers, for you to be called South African. We have not yet won the war against colonialism and colonial invasion. And the evidence of that is the fact that we are still landless. We still do not own our cultural and knowledge identity. We still are under the system of white domination. Whatever you can say, if you check in South Africa today, the most simple illustration is just the basic illustrations of human development on each and every human being. If you take white people in South Africa, the white colonial settlers and their descendants, and measure them by themselves, they will be in the top 10 or top 20 most developed nation in the world in terms of levels of literacy, levels of unemployment, life expectancy. So in South Africa, because of the conquest, because of the fact that we were defeated as black people who are landless, who do not have quality services, who do not have quality education, healthcare, even the life expectancy of black people is far lesser than the life expectancy of the white people. There's even more than 10 years difference. We say, Mfundisi, the apostles, that sometimes when people die, that is the will of God. In South Africa, it doesn't look like it's just the will of God, because it's a socio-economic condition. Because it can't be correct that it's easier for black people to die than for white people to die. White people have got longer lives because they live in far much better conditions than all of us. They own everything. They own the mines, they own the banks, they own the chain retail stores. Everything. It's 31 years of the so-called freedom now. But there is no serious economic role player who looks like me and you. Do you know, in South Africa as we speak today, there is not a single black-owned chain stores that has got more than 10 stores, 10. But Pick n Pay is 700 and something stores. ShopRite is 1,000 stores. Spar is thousands of stores. There is not a single black-owned chain retail store in South Africa. 31 years after so-called freedom. In South Africa, there is not a single fast foods chain stores like KFC or Nando's or Chicken Licken, which is owned by a black person in South Africa today. Not one. So if black people have got, they are selling food, and we are the biggest consumers of food because we are, of course, the majority. stores which are owned by black people, fast food stores, it's 1 or 2, maximum maybe 4 or 5. There is nothing that we owe. You know, even the clothes that we wear, everything else that we do, there is nothing that is owned by black people. That is an illustration that we have not yet